I want to talk about an interview that Sharyl Attkisson had with former President Donald Trump. And in the interview, which was a lengthy interview, the clip that we're going to talk about was about a 2-minute time. And she called Donald Trump out about the expedited process of the COVID-19 vaccines under his presidential administration.
And the harms.
So here's the clip.
On COVID, you frequently say at your rallies and so on that you don't feel like you get enough credit on COVID. But by nearly every assessment, the CDC failed miserably at job one. And yes, the COVID vaccines were developed in record time, but as we now know, they don't prevent infection, illness, or transmission, and they have very potentially serious side effects. Do you think that maybe they were approved too fast? And in hindsight, based on what we know now, what would you have done differently?
She comes across as one of the first people to challenge President Trump in a more direct way and call him out. What do you think?
Well, I agree. And this is the first time that I'm sitting down and hearing this interview, and we're going to walk through it. But, to give her credit where credit is due,
Yeah.
She is the first reporter, individual that I've heard mention, Operation Warp Speed and calling Trump out on it.
Yeah, and I agree. And this is why I want this 2 minutes, we're going to unpack statement by statement, Sharyl and POTUS Trump. But here's the key. The key is when Attkisson, when she said that troubling information from CDC, in that statement, part of the statement, she's correct. When she said, yes, I know it was brought in a rapid speed, she should not have said that. Because this is the issue. President Trump and many of his acolytes tend to say that is a measure of success. That is a bogus measure of success because it's like when people try to say when some of the vaccine developers, those who support the mRNA shot, try to defend it and say, well, look, there's success, there's a rise in antibodies, vaccine-induced antibodies. But vaccine-induced antibodies is a natural consequence of anytime you introduce any antigen into the system, into the human body, you will raise antibodies. If I drink some coffee, I'm raising antibodies. So it's as simple as that. That is not a measure of immunity, of what we are concerned with, which is the ability to lay down long-term immunological memory, T-cell immunity. That's what we're interested in. We're interested in hard, objective, patient-important outcomes, not antibody surges, antibody titers. We want to know, does this vaccine confer protection in reducing the risk of ICU, the risk of hospitalization, the risk of infection, the risk of death? These are patient-important outcomes. Antibody surges is a proxy measure. So now when Sharyl says that these vaccines were bought in record time, of course they were. But think about what she's saying and kind of tacitly giving Trump praise, which I object to. And every time President Trump says it again, he's our only option. Mm-hmm. I support him. But it is wrong because they took a 20-year period and boiled it down into 4 to 5 months.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's listen to, after she made that comment, let's listen to President Trump's response.
Okay.
Vaccines, and we're going to find out, and it'll come out one way or the other.
Can you
but
reverse that?
I really had a mandate to get vaccines.
Please go back a little bit because I think he's saying something that's very important and eye-opening. So could you remind?
Sure. Let's play again.
Well, I think they're doing studies on the vaccines, and we're going to find out.
Stop.
And
what do you think of that statement by President Trump?
Well, he said, I think they're doing studies on the vaccines, and I think we're going to find out.
Well,
it's already been rolled out. So you can't really put what was unveiled and rolled out back into the box because the vaccines have already been injected into millions of individuals.
Billions. And I think that's an incredible statement by President Trump. To me, a flat wrong statement. Again, huge supporter of POTUS Trump. The dictum in Washington when I was there and people were introducing me, saying, this is the guy You could call President Trump 3 a.m. in the morning. He'll come and cut the White House lawn for you. He supports you so much. Remains this way.
Right. And you know, a point of that is, you know, I understand, you know, you are without a doubt a Trump supporter. But the fact of the matter is that here we are with the election less than 2 months away. And there is, Trump is continuing to praise Operation Warp Speed at all of his rallies. And I think what we need to hear from President Trump is he needs to seriously look at the harms of the vaccine and address that, as opposed to just glazing over it and saying that, you know, we did this great thing and we did Operation Warp Speed and it was in record time. I think people are beyond that, and I think people want to dig a little deeper.
Well, I mean, you couldn't say it any better. And the point I am making too is, we haven't even gone further, but for President Trump to say that there's studies ongoing now, on what? You see, if I was doing the interview and I was Sharyl, I'd say, but President Trump, stop. On what?
Well, the problem is that there's never any pushback, it seems.
No.
Everybody is just going along to get along. And it's almost like the vaccine topic of the harms that we've seen is the elephant in the room now. Everybody sees it and they know it's there because it's really hard to miss, but nobody wants to talk about it. And so I think let's just hear his response, because I think that may help us unpack a little further.
Okay, but let me just put something so the listener understands. I know two sets of people. Well, I mean, we know millions. VAERS and whatever, and VAERS only captures 1% of the reporting. I know two sets of people where person one, son has lost his heart. His heart died soon as he took the vaccine. Hospital said it's due to the vaccine. Vaccine-induced severe myocarditis killed his heart. He's on a transplant list right now in America. I don't want to say more. I don't want nobody to find him, to know what I'm talking about. Two, I know of another family that same situation. Hospital said, the doctors who spoke confidentially said it is the vaccine inducing advanced myocarditis. It just killed it. And his heart failed, and he was on the heart transplant list, and he got a heart. He's still alive. It's about 8 to 9 months on advanced tissue rejection. He's struggling because he's getting reinfected, etc. So it's touch and go. Lives have been altered. People have died. And for President Trump to say that studies, so the question then is, FDA, Stephen Hahn, who I worked with, there's nobody in America, even in the present Trump orbit, in his past administration, in Biden-Harris orbit today, who had the vantage point I had in terms of COVID, the response, Operation Warp Speed, even a bit more than my direct bosses, because I was the academic scientist on tap.
And in fact, so the listeners understand, when there were press conferences being held and we saw Fauci or Birx at the podium, that you were, in fact, the man behind the curtain. You were literally standing behind that curtain.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, people, just to preface what she's saying, when Scott Atlas was brought in August and I was brought in there in late April, etc., it was to help President Trump kind of deal with this task force, because they were out of control with the corrupt, fraud, social distancing. But the point is, FDA Hahn gave emergency use authorization based on Pfizer and Moderna's trials. So what did they authorize? If for President Trump to say now studies are ongoing, to look at what? The effectiveness now, the harms, but we are seeing it, we are living it. So that should have been on tap before, and that should have been used to give the emergency use authorization or whatever authorization. They should have gone to full BLA. So that statement is a very troubling statement by President Trump.
Well, and it is just too little too late.
It is too late.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's hear what he has to say.
It'll come out one way or the other. But I really had a mandate to get vaccines done, and I got them done very quickly in
Stop.
record time.
What do you think of that?
So he had a mandate, he said, to get vaccines done very quickly, and he did them in record time. Well, he definitely did it in record time.
Yes.
And going back to his initial statement, though, you know, it's already these ongoing studies that are happening now. I guess, what is the purpose of those? We can't put what we unleashed back into a box. So the only purpose that exists is for future use of, and maybe an additional mRNA vaccine being rolled out, learning a lesson of what we did the first time and maybe not repeating it the second time.
Again, I agree
What
with
else?
what you're saying, and right now they're trying to take mRNA technology, this Malone Buller Bansal invention, and make it your sole life guardian, so to speak. It will dominate your life now.
Which
CRISPR.
we will be putting, and I don't want to get too deep into that because we are going to put out a 10-minute video on what that technology is.
Yeah, correct. And but the thing here though is this: when Trump talks about in record time, and we will find out one way or the other, the vaccine makers and Bansal and Bula and Monsef Slawi and General Purna and all of these people who ran Operation, remember, my office was on the 6th floor of Health and Human Services. Operation Warp Speed, the Trump administration gave Operation Warp Speed the 7th floor, the entire floor of Health and Human
And
Services.
tell us for a second, who was on that 7th floor to run Operation Warp Speed? Who was
Okay,
there?
so as you saw in the news, and I actually worked with them, I dealt with them daily. They know me, and I could walk up the fire escape. I didn't need the elevator, right by my office, straight up onto the 7th. As I got onto the 7th floor, Operation Warp Speed was a full military operation.
Okay,
So-
so let me stop you there. When you say full military operation, because, you know, I'm not one, I've never been in the military, so when you, I mean, were there guards standing at the door? Was everyone walking around in a uniform? When you say, what exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, that has have a lot of controversy where a lot of good people like Sharyl Attkisson and all of these people who've gone into the trying to figure out the structure of Operation Warp Speed. And the structure of Operation Warp Speed had Department of Defense at the top. In other words, when you got off of the 7th floor, it is as though you entered onto a military base, and I was there. Full uniform,
Okay.
Army, Navy uniform. A lot of the scientists, I sat in meetings with them. They are hardcore scientists, doctors, academic scientists, etc., in military uniform. And you know, I have the greatest respect for our police. I defend the blue first, and the greatest respect for anyone who served. So, in terms of their jobs, what they were doing, I am not faulting them. They had a large role to in the logistic operation of how to disperse, because remember in Operation Warp Speed, research was going on as vaccine was being developed minute by minute as it was being logistically dispersed, minute by minute. Now, the key I'm saying though is this, that if President Trump, again, I'm a huge supporter, this interview is to unpack that discussion between Sharyl and President Trump, which to me was flat wrong. Too much information was given there between both. Sharyl did not press him, did not follow up, and I think President Trump made some statements that quite frankly can't be defended. And I will do everything to elect him, because I know that President Trump was very initially too misled, misguided, misinformed. He made the best decisions he could based on what the vaccine developers, Purna, Slawi, Monsef Slawi and General Purna ran Operation Warp Speed. And the 7th floor of Health and Human Services was,
A military.
yes,
An
and they were
operation.
occupied by two entities. One, it was the head office of Operation Warp Speed, ran by Monsef Slawi and Purna. And two, part of the 7th floor was given to Moderna. So a lot of people don't understand that Moderna in developing their vaccine had partial operations on the 7th floor also. And Monsef Slawi, who ran Operation Warp Speed, had direct links into Moderna. Also, Stephen Hahn, who was the FDA commissioner, moved after the Trump administration. This is a very troubling issue I've spoken about and written about. He got a big plum position in Moderna. He just regulated Moderna, granted them emergency use authorization, gave them billions of dollars in contracts, and then he left the Trump administration and entered Moderna. In no sin, not even in Canada, where the health system and the bureaucracy is so corrupted, is it so in your face and corrupted. That needs to be investigated. All of them who leave FDA and CDC and NIH and NIAID and enter into pharma. Okay, continue.
Okay.
The Democrats love it. You know, the Democrats love it and the Republicans don't. It's
Love
very
what?
interesting.
Okay, stop.
The vaccines. They
vaccines.
love it.
Okay, what did President Trump just say? What do you make of that?
Well, I want to go a little further because he was continuing to talk about it. So let me just press a little further here.
I have a friend of mine who said to me, why don't you talk about the vaccine, what you did with the vaccine? He's a Democrat, but I'm sure he voted for me. He said, what you did was the most incredible thing that any president has ever done. You've saved hundreds of millions of lives all over the world. And this was just recently. Very smart guy.
Okay, so he saved.
I'm so outraged.
He saved hundreds of millions of lives, supposedly, with a vaccine that we just got done hearing never did what it was intended to do. So I really can't make any sense out of what Trump said, because I can't explain it to the listeners because it doesn't make any sense to me. It's almost become an imagination, if
Yes.
you will. It's an imagined saving of lives. It's an imagined great Operation Warp Speed that was rolled out. I have nothing else to say about that.
Okay, so you know, there are going to be listeners always, especially my Substack, because I have it balanced. Anybody could come on and write and comment, right? It's free. There are Democrats and there are people on both sides of the issues. But here, let us cut straight to the point. President Trump said, first of all, I have looked at all of the science, me and other research groups, and we've published together. We published, we did the research. We looked at lockdowns, Dr. Ramin Oskri, Dr. Harvey Reish, myself. We looked at lockdowns, the body of evidence. We looked at all of the school closures in the entire world, in every state, in every location in America, almost down to the school level. We looked at every mask mandate. We looked at every business closure. We looked at anything that be construed as a shielding step, a COVID policy.
And what did you find out?
We found absolutely zero evidence in not one place in the entire world, not in America, not in New York, in the world, can we find any indication that any lockdown, school closure, mask mandate, business closure, or shielding policy that end. And definitely, we found no evidence, none, out of the box, that the COVID mRNA gene platform and even the DNA viral vector platform, that it worked to reduce hospitalizations and death or conferred any protections of the upper airway. It is so prominent that I could say it here clearly. Today, we are in September 20th or something, the 21st of 2024. There is not one study, I want you to listen to my words carefully, not one study done by any of the vaccine makers, done by anyone, Pfizer, Moderna, that has shown no randomized clinical placebo-controlled trial, none, with the proper research methodology, none, zero, not even an observational weaker design that shows that these mRNA shots reduce hospitalization, reduce ICU, or reduce death in children or adults. And I challenge anyone who's listening to this video, any scientist in this entire world, any doctor, anyone in Biden administration and anyone in the former Trump administration, any vaccine maker, challenge me on that statement and produce the evidence.
So, and if you're listening and you would like to challenge Dr. Paul Alexander on that statement, you can certainly reach out to him through his Substack and or the YouTube video in the comments section. You can send a message and we will get back to you. Just let's be very transparent, because we do want people,
yes,
if there is that knowledge out there, we want them to get a hold of us.
Yeah, people find me, they know how to. But listen, it is incredible that President Trump just said that millions of lives have been saved, and people tell him that. Where?
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. Why? I mean, Trump is a smart man,
Very
right?
smart, and he knows.
Okay, right?
I am telling you, I sat in a meeting where people who deal with President Trump directly told me, because we were talking of how they could use me coming up even to the RNC or in any capacity to talk about it, making sure.
Which, just real quick, the RNC, there was not a mention of COVID.
Zero.
So, and we can talk about that at another event. But I guess,
but they told me, they looked at me and said, Paul, because they were so upset too, because they have kids, and they were telling me how the stuff I was saying on Atlas early on caused them not to vaccinate their children, and how they wanted to thank me in person. They came to these meetings to thank me, and these people work with Trump directly, because what I said prevented them, and now they wanted to praise me because they said, Paul, you actually saved. I looked at them and said, they said it clearly. They said, Paul, and there were many people present, you actually saved many lives in America, the life of many children, from myocarditis, pericarditis, Guillain-Barré, paralysis, brain bleeds, strokes, clots, because parents listen to you. And the point I'm making to you is this: why would President Trump, and they told me, they said, Paul, Trump knows. So I looked at them and I said, what do you mean? One of them put his hand on my leg, on my knee. I remembered clearly, and he watched me in my eye and said, Paul, President Trump knows that the vaccine is harmful. So if this is so, how could he have this interview with Attkisson? Is this a political? Is this an election issue? Because I can't agree with that.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think it is an election issue. I think that, as I said, Trump is a smart man.
He's very sweet, Wharton educated.
First, right? Secondly, you had just told us a conversation that happened where this individual said Trump knows. So why then would you continue to praise something that was ineffective and in fact harmful? Well, is it because he's afraid of shattering his base that he has of individuals because of his praising of Operation Warp Speed and essentially unveiling it under his presidency? Were people going out and partaking of it and feeling comfortable with it because they believe in President Trump?
Yes.
And then he's perhaps afraid of upsetting that apple cart now, because if you were a supporter of Trump and you felt confident taking yourself and or your family out and getting this vaccine because it was unveiled under President Trump's administration, if he comes out now and says, look, Operation Warp Speed was actually harmful, what does that potentially do to his base? And maybe he's being advised by people on his team that are saying, we just can't come out and tell the truth about what Operation Warp Speed was and what it wasn't.
Yeah, but okay, I agree with what you're saying, and there are other people who've said something kind of like that. I like how you explained that, but here's the key. At the end of the day, we're not talking about something that was like a kind of a slight mistake, and that you bought for us something that was not working. Like you gave us a sugar pill, but it was safe. No, they brought something that was not working because they knew quite early that this vaccine did not sterilize the virus. It means didn't stop infection, replication, or transmission. It didn't even reach the threshold of being able to be mandated because it conferred no societal advantage or benefit. They knew that. Yet they also knew that the vaccine was harmful. None of the studies prior to bringing this were successful in any of the animal models, in any model. And they also knew that the mRNA placed inside of that molecular transport vehicle, the lipid nanoparticles, that platform, the mRNA plus the lipid nanoparticles, were very dangerous.
President Trump.
He said, I don't understand why you don't talk about it. And I don't talk about it. But if you go to Pfizer, if you go to some of these companies, they have charts and they have all sorts of statistics. And I say, why don't you release those statistics? Let people know. But I don't talk about it. I can say this. The Democrats would love to claim it. The Republicans don't want to claim it.
But the statements made here cannot be defended. And what I will challenge you now is to look at many of the people running around right now looking for jobs in the Trump administration. They will be silent. We might be two of the only people who sit down and have a proper conversation based on that interview, because you see, we're not looking for jobs. We're not looking for money out. We really want accountability, justice, punishment where it is needed. We need this properly investigated. And I have a problem with what he just said there, because when he said that their charts when Pfizer, Moderna, charts on what? Pfizer, Moderna cannot have charts showing. And you see, this is where, I'll be honest, Sharyl Attkisson is not a scientist. Actually, she's a bright lady. I followed her. She might not be a doctor or something. You don't really need to be. But you needed a purist scientist to deal with President Trump. Because that statement he made, she should have followed up and see what President Trump...
What do you mean by charts? What are we talking? What kind of charts?
And were it those charts that they submitted to FDA to get the EAU? Because they were flat wrong and fraud. Because we know that what was submitted to the FDA and got EAU turned around and harmed the population. So what charts do you mean? Because I challenge anyone to show us chart. We've seen all of FDA's submissions. FDA's submissions, the regulatory submissions, and Moderna and Pfizer to FDA. It's in the public space. We've written about them line by line. It was us, people like me, who found the 1,223 deaths that Pfizer failed to report. And when we showed there were more deaths in the vaccine arm than the placebo arm, where Pfizer failed to report 3,000 participants, they stripped away from the data. That when we back calculated the analysis, we showed that it didn't even reach to the 95% relative risk reduction. It didn't even get to 50%.
Right. So I think too, a point that he makes is he talks about, Democrats and Republicans. And
I don't understand that.
And I don't understand it either, because look, if it is truly a health issue, what does it matter if you're registered Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Independent, whatever? Like, it should not matter.
But what is he saying, that Republicans are stupid?
Well, he's saying that the Democrats would love to take credit for rolling out the Operation Warp Speed, but the Republicans were the ones under his administration that rolled it out. That's what I'm hearing. But it makes no sense, because once again, I just go back to, as an individual who you care about your health, we all care about, or we should all care about our individual health. I don't care if someone's a Democrat or Republican who rolls it out.
Yeah.
If they want to take credit for it, then let them celebrate on their own and take credit for it. But to me and to the population, it shouldn't matter who rolls it out. What matters is, was something rolled out that was safe, and was it effective? And what we're hearing and uncovering more and more every day is it was neither safe nor was it effective. Let's continue with
But
this.
can I ask you something?
Sure.
Something you just said. If President Trump is saying that the Republicans don't want to take credit, but the Democrats want, what he's actually saying indirectly is that the Republicans are smarter than the Democrats, because the Republicans understand and are struggling with the harms and willing to stand up, and the Democrats...
No, I think what he's saying is that it was rolled out under the Republicans, and the Democrats would love to take credit for it. but
But they've shared the harms and deaths with
well,
Republicans.
they have, but this is just what we're hearing of the statement. Let's go on and see.
I need a
Determined,
drink.
I'd say over the next 12 months. I say this in terms of overall, I think I did an amazing job with COVID. I never got the credit for it. Remember that more people died under Biden-Harris than died under Trump. And they had a much easier time because when it came in here, nobody knew what it was. It came from the Wuhan labs, which I always said, but nobody really knew what it was, where it came from, nothing.
Okay, what do you make of that set of statements? And the fact that she's not asking him anything in rebuttal, but what do you make of what he just said? Again, I love President Trump.
Yes, and once again, it's this pitting of people against one another. You're either a Democrat or you're a Republican, so you need to pick a side. And in reality, it shouldn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican. What should matter is that something was brought to the world and it was unveiled in record time. Mm-hmm. That's not typical of how vaccines are typically rolled out, historically speaking. Mm-hmm. When that vaccine was rolled out, now we know, and perhaps you would even argue that we knew initially, but in talking to a general population, now we know that it was neither effective and or safe fully. And the reality is it just shouldn't matter what side of the political aisle you're on.
Correct.
I don't know why that is even.
But
I guess I don't even know why Trump is arguing that.
I so agree, and you see, that's why we wanted to take it apart frame by frame. Again, Attkisson made a mistake here not probing him deeper, and it shows why when you speak to somebody on these issues, you need to speak, you need to have somebody on at least one side to be a skilled person in that area. Now, when President Trump said that he doesn't get credit for Operation Warp Speed, the vaccines, it was a huge success. I mean, Mayor Deb, President Trump is flat wrong. There is no evidence anywhere, and it's not even about a data issue. It's an issue where if I'm sitting here, I could guarantee the listener, I could walk out there, the first 10 people I meet, if I ask them, do you know anyone who's taken the shot and had a harmful effect? Absolutely. Everybody will say yes. Every time I give a meeting or a speech and I end it and I say, and if there are 5,000 people present, right, tell me by a show of hands if you know of somebody harmed. Everyone puts up their hands.
And you're right, and I too could do the same thing, and I would just say that this is why I think this is a topic that we're missing an opportunity as with an upcoming election to have a conversation, yes, as a community, Democrats and Republicans alike, to come together and to talk about what happened and realize that on this topic we have so much in common because we all know someone who was harmed by the vaccine. And that is our commonality, our common point, that we should come together and try to do better instead of this divisiveness, this Democrat, Republican, drawing these strict lines.
Yeah, but the real issue is, the real issue, the real part of the discussion is we have to be honest. Yes. It is time that people be honest. President Trump, President Biden, President Harris, Fauci, all must be honest that these things that they brought failed, never worked, we never needed. Had we done nothing, had we done nothing other than strongly double down, triple down, protect our vulnerable for example, when this was beginning, whether we go along with if this was a real bad coronavirus caused this, maybe it was a toxin or a poison, and they put out the advisory, there's this thing called coronavirus, it's circulating, we want you guys to stay indoors. We didn't need that. We didn't need no lockdowns. All you needed to do, Mayor Deb, was look around you and say, my elderly mother lives with me. My elderly mother is 90. She may or may not have an underlying medical condition. You strongly protect her. What we meant by that is Johnny, 12 years old, goes out to ride his bike routinely, comes back in. Say, look, Johnny, the government says that there's a probable virus circulating. We're not too sure. We're trying to wrap our arms around it. For now, when you come inside, don't go and run up to Granny as normal and give her a kiss and jump in her lap. Leave Granny in her room a little bit. When we sort this out, from now, when we have dinner, Granny wouldn't join us at the table. You make reasonable, common sense decisions to adjust things for Granny, the risk. But life goes on because everyone else was at low to zero risk.
Well, let me stop you there because you use the words common sense.
Yes.
And look, you can go and scour the internet, and common sense went and critical thinking went right out the window. I was just looking the other day where I saw pictures of people at a grocery store with sponges strapped to their faces, with hockey helmets on. I mean, people literally lost their minds because of the fear that was incited. And I would just also say that we will never get to an honest conversation about this until we stop the political division. We stop this us-them mentality. But we won't, because what happens is when it's us-them, those people will never openly and honestly come and sit at a table because they can't. They fear the enemy. You're the enemy. You're the us. You're the them. And I think until we get to that point where we want to look at this as from a health perspective and take politics out of it, it's going to be this constant finger pointing. We rolled it out. We got to it first. Well, you rolled it out, but we really saved lives because we mandated it. It's just this finger pointing that goes.
But listen. The reason why we have these debates and discussions, I know we invited Alex Oldstein, some other people, is because I consider you a very, very informed person, and we have very serious issues. The issue here is this. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue.
Right.
People were killed by the it was the pandemic response, the medical response with the isolation, the sedatives of propofol, midazolam, lorazepam, fentanyl, diamorphine, the remdesivir, and the ventilator that killed most people.
Well, also the suicides.
Yes.
That part, happened based on the lockdowns.
Yes.
That was another aspect that, of course, once again, nobody is discussing that.
No, many children, you see,
like,
Atlas and myself in the administration, the states were rolling stuff up to us that the media refused to cover because it would have made Trump look good. But I could tell you, we were getting reports from the states of children, young American children. Parents found them in their bedrooms. They hung themselves. Children died. Business owners committed suicide because of the lockdowns. Children because of the school closure. So we need a full, proper accounting of this. And the reality about it is this. President Trump is a good man. President Trump meant well in the beginning, and I think he always meant well. But I know there was a conspiration between the CDC, the NIH, the FDA, academia, Hollywood, the deep state cabal, whatever word you want to, rhinos, CDC, NIH, Fauci, Birx, Hahn, Azar. All of these people work together to undercut and subvert Trump. Trump meant well. He was not a scientist. And someone asked me recently in the Substack, they said, Dr. Alexander, why couldn't he come after 2 weeks to bend the curve and say, look, okay, that's it, we're going to open up. And I tried to explain. We were there. How could Trump? They knew it. Birx said it. After they got him to bend the curve for 2 weeks shut down, he couldn't come back and say, open up now. Because even you, the listener, you would have said, well, he's a crazy man or what? He's building buildings in New York. He's Trump. He's the builder. Now he want to argue with these 6 scientists on the podium telling them, flip off. I'm going to open the society and schools. No, they knew they had him.
Right. And that's because I want to stay, and that was the end of this 2-minute interview and on that we just discussed. So, just to wrap it up, Operation Warp Speed. Failure.
Trump should not. I have said it, I have written about it, and I believe people have come back to me and said, Paul, they weren't too sure about you. They thought you might have gone rogue and on that stage in RNC because I was being poked and pulled to give me
And
a
this
short
is at,
spin.
And this is at the RNC, the Republican
In
National
Mo-
Convention.
yeah.
You were scheduled to
Yeah,
speak.
in Milwaukee,
correct?
and then they told me, Paul, they don't even want you near that stage because they won't show. And I told them, look, 15 seconds.
They put a gag order on you.
Yeah, they put a guy, and it's why today, in this video, I'm hoping, I send it to the right people, that Bobby Kennedy Jr. sees this video too, because Bobby Kennedy I admire, and full disclosure, I know him personally. We've done stuff together. We did a major interview, several interviews, and I respect him. We went on stage, defeat the mandates. But since Bobby Kennedy has shown his support behind Trump, Bobby Kennedy has gone AWOL and silent on Operation Warp Speed and the Malone Buller vaccine. He was hammering that every day. And if I'm telling Bobby this, Bobby Kennedy Jr., you're a good man, smart man, you have a legacy. What you must do is, if in exchange for access to the Trump world, you need it to be silent, it's better you separate now. You will be more potent, more important to the American people. There's no price on silence. And I may pay a price more, but people like Mayor Deb, myself, other people, we've paid a price, income-wise, job-wise, career-wise, earnings-wise, the media-wise, but the point is we've been left standing. We cannot be bought.